The formulation of the problem is often more important than the solution. I don't believe, in fact, our schools are failing and need reforming. I think the problem is that our system of education, now nearly 100 years old, is obsolete and needs reinventing, not reforming. Unless you think that a utopian notion, I'd like to remind folks, we reinvented the one-room schoolhouse and created the factory model schools we still have today as we transition from a rural agrarian economy to an urban industrial society. So now, 100 years later, we still have factory model schools, but we don't have a factory model economy. Okay, so I read Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat, 2005. How many of you read that? My lovely wife was here tonight, made me read it. It scared the heck out of me, because he describes a world where increasingly any job that can be offshore or automated is very rapidly being commoditized. So I began to worry about what kinds of skills will our young people need to get and keep a good job. And are they the same skills they'll need for continuous learning and citizenship? And what I came to understand is that the world no longer cares how much you know, or whether you know more than the person next to you. Knowledge today has become a commodity. It's free. It's like air. It's like water. How many of you have been on the Khan Academy website? Raise your hands. 3,000 videos. Growing exponentially. So what I've come to understand is that the value added is not in what you know. The value added is in what you can do with what you know. And that is a completely different education problem. Because then it becomes a matter of developing students' skills and their will. I'm talking a little about skill and will. Skill. I interviewed a wide range of executives trying to understand what are the most important skills in the 21st century. What are the gaps? And I came to understand there's a set of core competencies that virtually every student must be well on the way to mastering before the end of high school. And that they're not just for a decent career, but they're also for continuous learning and citizenship. The competencies have converged. Very briefly, they are critical thinking and problem solving, number one. Over and over again, I heard executives say it's all about asking the right question. That's what critical thinking really is. Number two, agility and adaptability. Number three, collaboration across networks and leading by influence. Number four, initiative and entrepreneurialism. Mark Hammer, Vice President and General Counsel of Cisco Systems, talked to me about how senior executives in companies like his worry about keeping that entrepreneurial spirit alive. He said, if I have an employee who sets and meets 5 goals, that's no longer good enough. He said, if on the other hand, I'm an employee who sets 10 stretch goals and perhaps only succeeds in 7 or 8, he or she is a hero. What would that person be in our schools? A C or B student. They would have missed 2 out of 3, 2 or 3 out of 10. Come back to the failure issue in a moment. Number 5, effective oral and written communication. Number 1 complaint of both employers and college teachers. Senior executive Dell said to me, the reason these kids don't know how to write is because they don't know how to think. They don't know how to reason. They don't know how to analyze. And then he said to me, that's only half the problem. And I vividly remember what he said next, because I'm kind of a recovering high school English teacher. He said the other half of the problem is they do not know how to write with voice, meaning they don't know how to put their own passion and perspective into their communications, so as to be persuasive. Number 6, accessing and analyzing information. We all know. Last, curiosity and imagination. Now, how many of you have read Dan Pink's book, A Whole New Mind? Came out a few years ago? Well, as you know, he talks about curiosity and imagination, right brain skills, as important in the context of a sophisticated consumer economy, where we consumers want products with beauty and design and empathy. But I've come to see the importance of curiosity and imagination in a completely different light. That's what I want to talk about. So this book, on which I'm sort of summarized the research, The Global Achievement Gap, came out not quite 4 years ago. 2 things happened to me. Number 1, I got a kind of affirmation, literally from around the world, invitations to Taiwan, Singapore, Thailand, Bahrain, Helsinki, Madrid, and so on. People basically telling me, yeah, these are exactly the right skills. People at Wall Street, West Point, all of them saying, yep, you nailed it, these are the skills. But then the second thing happened, the economic collapse. And I suddenly saw college graduates with BA degrees going home and unable to find a job, having $30,000 in debt on average. Did you know right now today, seemingly they had all these skills that everybody told me was important. I mean, you should have gone to college after all. Well, that's another story. It turns out we don't necessarily have these skills in college. But the point is, what I came to understand is that those skills are necessary, but not sufficient. And here's why. As you really look at what happened with this economy, it's more than just credit default swaps. It's more than just a hyperinflated real estate market. Fundamentally, I came to understand we've become far too reliant on consumer spending as the engine of our economy. It's more than 70% of our GDP. And that consumer spending has for 20 years been increasingly fueled by people going into debt to buy their stuff, pulling money out of their houses, putting money on their credit cards as fast as they possibly could. The savings rate in 2007 was minus 2%. What happened? Everybody called in the loans. Leading me to conclude that, in fact, what we have done is create an economy based on people spending money they do not have to buy things they often may not need, threatening the planet in the process. You know, I studied the problem and tried to better understand, well, what's going to be our economy of the future? How are we going to be less dependent on consumer spending? I came to see that there's one word that's practically in everybody's vocabulary. That's the solution. Innovation. And not just high-tech stuff like this, but the idea being that we have to become a country that produces more better ideas to solve more different kinds of problems than elsewhere. Ideas that people can use to generate jobs, solutions to problems. Now, we've always been known as a pretty innovative society. Is that because of or in spite of our education system? Trivial pursuit question tonight. Went to Edwin Land, inventor of the Polaroid camera, graduated at MIT as I'm not mistaken. Bill Gates, Martin Zuckerberg, and Bonnie Raitt, the folks there, all four have in common. They didn't just drop out of it. They dropped out of Harvard, thank you very much. Not just any old college dropout like Steve Jobs or Michael Bell or Dean Cain. No, Harvard. So, for this new research that I began 3 years ago, I asked the question, how do you, in fact, develop the capabilities of many, many more young people to be innovative? They're not all going to be, a Steve Jobs. But my premise was, we're born curious, creative, imaginative. It is in all of our DNA. Until, as David Kelly said in school, not of us. So what do parents, teachers, mentors, and employers do to make sure that doesn't happen? To continue to develop the capabilities of young people to become more innovative in whatever they do, more imaginative, able to bring new thoughts, new ideas, new questions. So I interviewed a very wide range of young innovators, 7 of whom I believe you met, 6 of whom you met in this video. Innovators in their 20s doing a wide range of things, some in STEM fields, like David Senke working on prosthetics. One guy who dropped out of Exeter, dropped out of Stanford to become the product manager for the first iPhone for Apple. Young woman who started an amazing company to do 3D design, to democratize 3D design, now working for Autodesk. But also social entrepreneurs and social innovators. A young woman, African-American woman from New York City, who's created something called the Sweet Life to mentor young disadvantaged kids. She talks about the idea, where every school has a guidance counselor. She believes what is needed is for every young person to have a dream manager. That's what she's working on. She's 23. So after I interviewed these young people, I narrowed it a little bit and decided to then go interview their parents. And then I asked each one of them, is there a teacher or a mentor who's made a significant difference in your life? And I then went and interviewed them, those people. And I came to understand a kind of pattern that I find deeply disturbing. I interviewed teachers who were from literally elementary school to graduate school. And in every case, the teachers were outliers in their educational settings. Outliers. Teaching in ways that were very different than their peers. Of the teachers in 5 colleges who Number two, we reward and celebrate specialization in our schools. You go to high school, and the high school universe is divided and conquered by Carnegie units, subject content areas. And that system, by the way, is 120 years old. Name one of the system we're still using that's that old. You go to college, you have to choose a major. You have to become a specialist in something. If you want to get tenure at a university, you have to know this much about something this big. When I did my dissertation at Harvard, I was told that my dissertation would be a conversation between myself and one or two other people in the world. 4 years for a conversation with two people. The world of innovation, as you well know, is all about approaching problems interdisciplinarily, by contrast. It was Director of Talent at Google, Judy Gilbert, who said to me, if there was one thing academics must understand, is that you can neither solve nor even really frame problems within the bright lines of specific academic disciplines. Number three, the world of schooling is all about risk avoidance and penalizing failure. We created a compliance-based culture where the job of the student is to figure out what he or she has to do to please the teacher to get the grade that's required. Teachers are really incented against taking any forms of risk. More and more, they're incented to teach to a test. There's one curriculum in America, it's test prep, and they're lousy tests, so they don't tell us very much. The world of innovation, as you all know, that's the takeaway challenge, the takeaway set of questions that I believe need a lot more conversation. And I'm looking forward very much to the conversation with our panelists, who each have tremendous expertise in this area, as well as then questions and comments from you in the audience. So let me bring up our panelists. And I'm not going to remember their precise titles, but I will tell you what little I do know. Mitch Resnick is director of the education program here at the MIT Media Lab, and runs something about a lifelong kindergarten program. Is that about right? Please come on up, Mitch. Joe Swanson, did I pronounce it correctly? Also works here at the Media Lab in Media Studies, is that right? And also at the D Lab, and was a teacher for Jody Wu, who we met in the movie. Please come up. And last, of course, David Semke